I've been jumping around my base a lot. I'm sure all of us are familiar with this sort of action. You're just kind of hopping about, trying to work out how you're going to start the thing that you want to start. You see, I've got a lot of fantastic ideas floating around in my head. They're beautiful, they're stunning, they're absolutely perfect. But I know that as soon as I start building them, well, they won't be so perfect. This is the unfortunate nature of any creative act. The understanding that as soon as you start work on something, it is from that point forth a compromise, and that what you envision inside your head may not be able to be built to such absolute perfection. I feel like Doc M doesn't struggle with this, but in the process of me pondering creativity, I've discovered that I've actually built little jumps at the bottom of my base. Look at this, I can jump over them, and it feels really, really satisfying. And now I think I know what I'm going to do. The big plan. That is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to you about what my plans are, discuss with you my ideas, and give you a little peek behind the curtain as to almost the behind the scenes, the idea building element of Hermitcraft episodes. I'm going to get myself a new little template to work from. I'm going to start working out block palettes, and I'm going to start working out details of what is going to be the back area of my base. You see, I'm super happy with my little vault, and I'm really happy that I've actually got a proper home. This is something that feels complete, it feels solid, it feels alive, it feels detailed. I really like the fact that I actually live in something like that and don't have almost like a mega structure that doesn't really have much to the inside of it. But with that being said, I still want there to be an element of large scaledness to my base. I still want it to feel big. I still want it to feel like a mega base. And that is where this back area here is going to be coming in. So first things first, as you may have noticed, this whole template here is off center from my base. And that is because when I put down this base outline here, Grian hadn't actually built any of his base yet, and he definitely hadn't built this bridge. And then once he had built the bridge, he asked me if I could move my base over so that it aligned with his bridge, which was an incredibly good idea, because can you imagine how infuriating it would be looking at these two bases and having this one 8 blocks too far over? I think I rightfully would have lost all of my subscribers and my YouTube channel would be dead. I'd have no friends, and my mum wouldn't answer the phone when I called her. Now, the only thing that I can imagine being worse than that is that if the front part of my base lined up and then the rest of my base was out of alignment. So let's definitely not do that. I have taken a few screenshots because I think the actual form of it, the kind of shape that I had in mind, is going to be sticking around because I quite like it. However, with that being said, I am going to make some pretty major modifications to it, which are going to make it a slightly more dramatic build, I think. And on the topic of dramatic builds, I don't know why, but removing that template has definitely reduced the drama a little bit of my vault. It looks so small all of a sudden. It looks so tiny. It feels like it's immediately shrunk. It feels like it's gotten a lot smaller. You know, I designed this thing to be really evil looking and kind of sinister and scary. But now, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as that. It's like the size of a 3-bedroom house. There's nothing scary about a 3-bedroom house. I hadn't realized how much I was factoring in the size of the gigantic empty template out the back into the scale of my base. For some reason, it made this area weirdly look grander, which you wouldn't really expect. You would think that it would actually dwarf it and make this seem smaller, and now that it's gone, it looks bigger, but I think the opposite has happened. So we need to do something about this pretty swiftly. And my plan of action is simple. I'm going to build another template, and this template is going to be colourful. By the way, I've just noticed that my Elytra is almost out of charge, and I have no idea where the XP farms are on this server. It's weird, because of my extended break, I have a lot of knowledge about the things that were built in the first couple months, and then I have some knowledge about the things that have been built in the past month, but absolutely no knowledge of anything in between, which means I find myself getting lost a lot. I've managed to find a creeper. Is this an actual creeper? How? What is this? What is this? Oh, there's a sign explaining exactly what it is. I've managed to find my super fast slime farm. This definitely isn't an XP grinder, but it's something. I think I found the end. I hope I found the end, because if I haven't, I have no fireworks to get out of the end. Wow, this is probably one of the coolest looking enders I've ever seen in my entire life. Right, where were we? I got very distracted there. Template. I'm working on the design for the template that is going to be my mega base. Or should I say, mildly mega base? I'm not sure I quite want to call it a mega base because I don't want to put too much pressure on myself, but it's going to be mildly mega. Okay, so first things first, we've got the bridge, and I'm going to place down buttons every 8 blocks because I want to make sure that this is like a modular design, a bit like what I have going on with the walls, which I believe are also 8-block modules too, which is quite nice. I know that every 8 blocks, it's a repeating pattern, which means I need to build everything in 8-block chunks. Except the only thing is 7 blocks wide. Is that annoying? Would it be annoying for it to be 7 blocks wide? I think it could be. I mean, it makes a lot more sense if I make it 7-block chunks, but then it doesn't match up with the walls, but then I've only just realized it matches up with the walls. So why am I thinking that would be frustrating? I didn't even realize that was a thing. I'm going with 7. I'm going with 7-block chunks. That shouldn't have been that hard, but it was. So I now have this little template of a bridge sticking out the back of my base, and you can see this end bit here. This is where it's going to intersect with the other bridges. Just like I mentioned previously, I think I'm going to keep the essence of what the original template was, but I think I'm going to do it in a slightly different fashion to perhaps how I imagined it originally. And this right here is going to be the start of that. Now, do I mimic? How long is this? Is this 4 7-block modules here? So if I was to make it so that our bridge extended out 4 7-block modules, how would that look? It looks quite big. It looks quite big, imagining that is just one part of the square, so it would come out like this. But I think it's important that it extends past the vault. You see this back area here, this is going to be the large part of my base. So we've got the front smaller bit, this is the bit that I live in, and then we've got the large, slightly emptier. It's probably not going to have quite as much going on. There's going to be bigger air gaps, but the actual scale of it is going to be larger. And I think personally, any less than that, say we went for 1 less module, that would probably line it up pretty much identically to the edges of the vault, and I definitely don't want that. I don't want these 2 builds to be too similar in size. I hope you're enjoying this little look behind the curtain, by the way. I hope you're enjoying me running through my thought process here. To be honest, it's quite nice for me to air this stuff out. Generally speaking, I'd just be sat in some testing world or in a single player world and just kind of noting things down to myself and not really saying anything, and it's quite a lonely process. So actually being able to talk it through is fun. And I'm not saying that every single Hermitcraft episode is going to be like this from this point forth, but sometimes I think it's interesting to mix things up and jump past the super fast pace and super fast cutting and skipping of a lot of this thought process, and actually dive deeply into the hows and the whys occasionally. And on that note, let's skip me building the rest of the square. Okay, it turns out this square requires much more concrete than I was first expecting, but on the plus side, it does mean that I get to do this, and this is very satisfying. This is definitely not as satisfying, but this is really quite satisfying. I would say proportionally, this is the perfect size. It's ever so slightly bigger than the rest of the vault, while still being a manageable size for me to actually construct, and also in keeping with the vault size itself. You see, I really don't want this thing to look too small. I don't want it to look tiny anymore. I don't want it to get dwarfed by an absolutely enormous build. I still want this to be an important part of the structure, and I think this is absolutely spot on. So I guess next thing that I have to work out is I have to work out what the modules are actually going to be. And then we'll move on to what's going inside this giant bridge structure. To the creative mode testing world. So I need to work out what my little 7x7 modules are going to look like. So first things first, let's actually create a 7x7 square. Okay, now I'm going to make a 5x5 square and scrap the 7x7 square, because if the feet of this bridge are 7x7, then that means they're going to be touching one another, and that doesn't look so great. So if they're 5x5, that means there'll be 2 blocks between each other, and that looks much better. By the way, I'm designing the feet of the bridge. I don't know if I made that clear yet, but that's what we're working on right now. And then I think maybe, something like that looks pretty good for each side, and also allows us to light up the bottom, which is pretty good. Now, one thing that I don't really like is these bits of the frog light poking through, so I wonder if I put the stairs like this, does that look nicer? I kind of think it looks nicer. Unfortunately, we can't mimic it over here because there's no way that I can place the stairs so that it would do it. So it can only be on one side. But I think it looks good. I do think it looks better as copper though. I think when it's like this, that looks a little bit too separate, but when it's like that, that looks much more solid. Yeah, that's like 10 times better. It does use a lot more copper though, but I still think that's much better. And then I think this little setup here for the connecting bits, I'd say that's good. I don't think that needs anything much more than that. So I'm pretty happy with the design that we currently have. Now I just need to clone it a little bit so I can see how it feels when there's lots of them. And yeah, I think that's quite nice. This is a really important part of the process because when there's only one of them, you can often add a bunch of details because you feel like there's not enough going on. But as soon as you start adding more, it starts to look really busy. I don't think I've gone too far. I don't think it's too busy, but we're definitely on the edge. Right, now let's design the top section. Now my first idea isn't particularly creative, but it could be a bit of a winner, which is to just mimic what I've done down at the bottom. I like this design. It should look pretty good upside down, because everybody knows if something looks good the right way up, then it's probably still going to look good the wrong way up, and that law has proved true. I would say this looks great. Now I just need to work out how I'm going to do the edges of the bridge, and the first thing that comes to mind is to put some borders on it and then maybe make use of some walls to add some depth. Does that look good? I mean, it might look good. And then have some stairs there. Yeah, so it would kind of like wave along with the bridge design. I mean, it doesn't look bad. Maybe, just maybe it's too much of one color. Maybe we need to break it up with some copper. I'd say that looks better. I do think we're getting somewhere with these walls and bits. I think if I have something like, I don't know what type of slab I want, maybe one of these ones. We can try out the bricks, but then if that looks too uniform, which I think it does, maybe we mix it up with a slightly different color. Does that look weird? I mean, it kind of looks like a superhero logo, but I don't know if I'm upset about that. It kind of also looks like someone who's just eaten a lemon. You know, this is their nose, their lips are pierced, and their eyes are squinting. I mean, now that I've seen that, I don't know if I can not see that, even though that is so obscure. I'm probably the only person that notices that. But now I've said it to over 1 million people, and now over 1 million people notice that. Okay, I'm not sure I like the sneaky bridge design, so I think I've come up with a few ways to get around it. Does that look good? I don't think so. Does that look good? That looks better than the prismarine. What does copper look like? Okay, I don't think copper looks good, so I would say maybe this? Maybe? Or maybe none of them. Maybe I prefer it without. This is why building's hard. There's no clear answer or anything. I mean, I could throw in an absolute wild card and I could chuck a stair in the middle there. Does that look better? I don't think that looks better. Oh, I'm a big fan of the prismarine. I think the prismarine is the one. I don't think it's too distracting. I think it's a different texture from the copper, so it doesn't feel too uniform. I think this one might be it. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about the leg? What about the thing that connects the top and the bottom? Well, in an act of geniusness and also partly laziness, I think if I use water, I should be able to create something that looks like a pillar without actually having to build a pillar. And I would say that's been pretty successful. I personally think that looks really good. Question is, would it look better if it had some blocks running down the middle of it? I feel like that would lose some of the mysticness of it, but equally ground it in reality a little bit more. No, I think that looks way worse. Yeah, that looks significantly worse. It's weird. Now that I have blocks on the inside of this, it goes into the uncanny valley where it's like, oh, that's impossible. Those blocks would not be able to hold up this top bridge. But when there was no blocks, then it kind of looked more possible. Like, that looks less stable. Building and brains are both oddities that will never be understood. Now, do I want to add anything in that kind of breaks up the pillar at all? Bearing in mind that the pillar is going to be slightly taller than this, I think, on the Hermitcraft server. Something like these little things. I mean, that is quite a cool addition. I would say that is quite a cool addition. I would definitely say, now that there's 9 of them, that is a very cool addition. Now, do I think that some of these maybe don't have to have water spouts? Maybe we alternate the water spouts and then do something else up there? Yeah, that's definitely an option that I'm willing to play with. But I think we have succeeded in what we wanted to do. This has the beginnings, this has the look of a mega build, and that gets me very, very excited indeed. So let's hop back onto the Hermitcraft server to plan out the remaining areas. The bridge has been worked out, and that is going to look absolutely glorious. Now that I'm seeing it back here, I can see something else back here. Where did you even come from? I sincerely hope that wasn't Scar in his silly little costume. Anyway, next up, we've got the central area. Now, this is going to involve another small detail is kind of going to be a bridge, but not really a bridge. It's more a border for what is going in the middle. And this is how big it's going to be. So it looks pretty good. Oh, I should explain. It's not this gap. There's going to be a gap between the bridge and then this border here. And then inside of this is going to be our industrial farming zone. I'm sure all of you saw it coming, but I am incredibly excited to build it because the last time I built an industrial district was Hermitcraft Season 7. That's like a really long time ago. Now my plan of action is, generally speaking, when I've built industrial districts in the past, they've been sprawling out over large areas of land. Well, this time I kind of want to do it vertically, a little bit like what Impulse did in Hermitcraft, I think Season 4. I think this is a callback to Hermitcraft Season 4. So for those of you who have been watching for a very long time, you'll know what I'm talking about. He made something called the Super Chunk, which was just a bunch of farms stacked up on top of one another. And I've always loved that idea because it seems like a really simple way of doing things, because you can load all the chunks really easily and you can move the items up and down really easily. Like, everything can be connected pretty simply. And I think encased in an awesome looking build, the actual farming tower itself could end up looking epic. It could end up looking really, really cool. And also, if we surround it in good builds, then it takes the pressure off the farms having to look good. I mean, I'll still try and make the farms look good, but like the focus building wise is still going to be on the outside, and then they're going to be surrounding the function, which is going to go in the middle. Does that make sense? Can you tell I'm excited about this one? So first things first, I just need to connect this up into this zone here. So I think this is where our storage system is going to be going. Then this area here is going to be our industrial farming area, with a little bit on each side just to transport the items up, and also to send redstone signals to all of the farms to allow us to switch them on and off with just one lever. Something that I often try and fail to do with basically all of my industrial districts. This might just be one of the most satisfying looking templates I've ever created. I mean, just looking at this makes me happy. I almost don't want to get rid of it. You know, I could just leave the template here and call this a finished build. Look how nice and orderly that looks. That looks so planned out. All the proportions are nice. I guess that's what I get for actually measuring things. Everything's kind of in alignment. Everything feels correct. This is an absolute winner. I really can't wait to start building this. I can picture it in my head. I can picture that bridge design making its way around, looking really big, really sinister, really evil, and then we've got the borders, which I think I'm going to mimic a similar style. That's something that I'm going to work out. It's only a small thing. And then the farms themselves expanding from the floor all the way upwards. I mean, I don't know how high we're going to go. I mean, I've got a very tall base that I'm competing with here, so I feel like I do need to do something quite impressive vertically. And I guess there are certain farms that benefit from being up in the sky, so it makes sense that I would construct those up there as well. Things like mob farms or whatever else I want to construct. And then I might even make it so that this is like a multi-layer storage system, just so everything is all in one place. It's nice and easily accessible. I don't have to travel many blocks to get the things that I need. Everything's kind of within reaching distance. That would be fantastic. This is a very exciting plan. This is a very exciting plan that has got me very excited. You see, my brain works on knowing the future in a way. I like to know what I'm working on and what I'm working towards. And recently I haven't really had that. You know, I knew that I was going to finish this, and then I didn't really know what I was going to do from there. So I'm super glad that I managed to get this planned out. I now have a bit of a roadmap. I now have an idea. And what's cool about this is that you guys are in on it. In the past, I've kept my future plans a little bit secretive, and I haven't really explained too far ahead, which is nice in some ways. But equally, I think it's quite cool having you be part of the process and see what's actually coming, and then you can give feedback and you can actually be a part of it and make suggestions that could make the project better. So this is it. This is the big idea. This is what I'm working on for Hermitcraft Season 9. I hope it sounds exciting. It certainly sounds exciting to me. I just can't wait to start constructing it. I hope that you enjoyed this slightly different Hermitcraft episode, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!